Right. Welcome, Harmony Slater, to Keto Yoga YouTube chats. Hello. Nice to have you back. I think it's probably at least our third or fourth meeting on panels and chats and podcasts, etc.
Yeah.
So kind of almost online buddies. I've seen you more online than I've ever seen you in person, I think. Probably spent
I
more
think
time,
that's
more hours
true.
online than we've ever spent together in
It's kind
person.
of nice. It's like we
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
to,
We get on pretty well.
hang
Yeah,
out
online. Yeah,
every
yeah,
few
yeah.
months.
But the last thing we did was the online women's panel, which was incredibly successful and in a
Yeah.
fantastic event. It really was. And I wanted to just maybe just kind of reiterate that some of that stuff with you today, as we were kind of both hosts on that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we're going to talk on women in Ashtanga again a little bit and just go through some of those subjects. The first
Perfect.
question that I had was, which is it's always hard to find a way an opener, and I thought, well, the easiest opener is the big one: is Ashtanga yoga a patriarchal system? Like is it
Hmm.
accommodating for women, or is it a male system that women are kind of allowed to participate in and treated like men? In terms of
Yeah.
doing the same thing, the jumps, the muscle stuff, the lack of respect for the cycle, the lack of respect often. I mean, I've heard crazy stuff about women being shamed and guilted when they've had kids, that they're struggling with practice. And I mean, it seems crazy that teachers would do this, but have you felt in your experience that the balance needs to be adjusted?
Yeah, it's so interesting because patriarchy is, basically sort of the male domination as you explain in public and private spheres. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think definitely when Ashtanga yoga kind of was first presented to, America, Europe, um, it was very much kind of embedded in this patriarchal system. I mean, there's a man at the top who's the guru that you listen to and you follow along with. Um,
Mm,
Even at that time, I would say it was a lot of men practicing. It was a very
mainly,
strong practice,
yeah,
very acrobatic, a lot of handstands, a lot of arm balancing. And all of the teachers, all of the top teachers also were men. And still to this day, there's more like certified men historically than women.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It's like kind of like look at a practice group and you've got like two men, like out of 30 students, and then you've got like if you think of all the teachers,
yeah,
what 70% are probably of the well-known ones are probably men,
yeah,
aren't they?
for sure. And so, yeah, I feel like it definitely is sort of embedded in that tradition. And even Indian culture is embedded in that tradition. The you pass down things to your eldest son, and only the eldest son is eligible to do certain rites and rituals. And, so I mean, culturally, the yoga comes from that kind of system, even though at its heart, it's maybe like sexist or discriminatory, but it definitely has this sort of background, I think. And, it's difficult even like as a female teacher because when you show up and do a workshop, or when I show up and do a workshop, I would say, get like, a third less students than a male teacher, even. And so,
Hmm.
even like within our minds, we're perpetuating the
Programmed. Yeah, yeah.
patriarchy, you know?
I think we are programmed. I think, and you
Mhm.
said that before about that you found that the studio, I think, was it said to you that a studio owner said to you
Yeah.
that, if you were a male teacher, you would have gotten, like, I think it's
Yeah.
still true. And I think, and we know that even women speaking out about it can often still be inherently still kind of in the grip of the
Yeah.
patriarchy and going to speaking out about it, but still going to mainly male teachers and, and be encouraged to practice like
Mhm.
a man. I mean, if we can say that, I mean,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
and
yeah.
can we say that? Is there, ought I mean, to kind of move swiftly onto like a second
Yeah.
qualification of a question? Ought the practice to be modified, generally speaking, without taking into account different stages of a woman's life, pregnancy, whatever? Inherently, ought the practice to be accommodating more to a woman's body?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like this is such a like double-sided question because on the one side, there's this idea that like as women, we should be like able to do everything a man can do, and that's sort of part of feminism, right? That's
Yeah, right.
like, you can lift up from Kranavasana, I can lift up from Kranavasana. You can jump back, I can jump back. You
Yeah.
can do handstands, I can do handstands. Like it's like this kind of like trying to show up in the exact same way that men show up based on physical abilities or physical um, achievement. And I think like, there is that aspect to it that is very empowering for women.
Mm,
And I think when
mm.
I was a lot younger, I had more of that in me, right? Like, I want to float. I want to lift up from Krandavasana. I want to do all the things that men can do. I can do third series. I can, do all these arm balances. I can do everything.
And you did it. You did them. I mean, to your credit, you
And
did
I
do
did
them.
it.
Yeah, and you did them very well. Just better than most men, in fact. But I mean, did it feel good, or was it? Did it adjust the balance, or did you feel like something in you was out of balance?
I think honestly, like I feel like with women, our lives, like our trajectory in life is very up and down, and it's a lot more complex. Like even just like hormonally, and everything going on, like with stages of life. Um, I think it's a lot more complicated than a typical sort of male trajectory, right? Like, and so it feels good until it doesn't. And I think that that's sort of the thing. Like, if you can do that and it feels good, then sure, like be empowered to do that. But the thing that always like bothers me is it's not just men telling women they should like practice that way or be able to do that. It's also women telling women that
Mm.
they should practice that way and be able to do all these things. And it's women saying to women, no, you can lift up from Kranavasana. You just need to like
Right. Or you kind
practice
of
more,
like,
do it
yeah,
20 times or whatever.
you're
But
kind of
like,
letting the feminist message down if you're not kind of, like attempting to keep up with men. You're not doing like,
yeah.
representing women, strongly enough in their arena, right? Like,
Yeah, but the
yeah.
truth is like there are certain body shapes and types that that's going to be very, very difficult for. And there's even a few men who have different body shapes and types that it's
Of,
very,
of
very
course.
difficult
Yeah,
for.
I mean, in this day and age, like gender is obviously a tricky subject, and there's always going to be women that are really, really strong and it's naturally fine for them. And there's, but there's
Yeah.
also going to be women that are, more curvaceous who, are going to find, some of the arm balance stuff and some of the jumping, I kind of find it's a fine line, but I kind of feel that encouraging this idea of literal sameness is a sticky subject often for men for backbending, when there's
Yeah,
a lot of musculature gets in the way, and
for
of the
sure.
shoulders, and then they hurt their lower back so often, or the knees.
Hmm.
Men in the hips, men with the
Yeah,
knees,
yeah,
and women for the shoulders for the jumping,
yeah. The
because
shoulders, the elbows, the wrists.
yeah, because you're encouraged. Oh, you can do it. You're the same. It's the same. But when it's like, so it's a tricky, kind of balancing act. And whilst we're not saying, like women should be doing like this and men should be doing like that, I think it's worth just acknowledging that it's fine to have differences. It doesn't mean you're not practicing Ashtanga yoga traditionally and well, and an Ashtanga student and committed to practice, even if you're respecting your own body. I mean, that's how it
Totally.
always
And
comes. Yeah,
also, I think like stages of life, like when you're really
yeah,
young and you have no children and you can devote 2.5 hours to practicing asana every day, yeah, anything is possible, quite literally, because all of your time and energy and focus and resources are going to this one thing, which is like your physical sort of capacity to do these feats of acrobatics and,
crazy.
contortionism.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kind of when you reflect on it, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? It's like, and I devoted all like every day to do that. It's like, oh well, yeah,
You can control your
yeah,
sleep, you can control your
yeah, yeah,
diet, you can
yeah,
control your TV watching time, you can control everything. But if you have children, everything's out of control all of a sudden. Nothing's in your control. You can't control your sleep, you can't control your body, you can't control like, you know, your food necessarily. Like it's totally all over the map. And then even later in life, when you start to go through menopause, like naturally with those hormone changes, you start to lose muscle mass quite rapidly. I mean, men also lose muscle mass,
absolutely,
but not at the same extent or rate that women do.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
you lose strength, like
yeah.
literally you start to lose strength. And that's I mean, on top of a lot of other symptoms, like just feeling tired and like not having the energy and not having the same kind of like willpower
The
to
will
commit
goes.
to this thing.
You know, it's like I
Yeah.
could really, really push, but I just haven't got the energy,
Yeah. And
which is not a
so,
bad place to be in either. I mean, let's
no.
backtrack a second to. I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, I'll ask you about pregnancy because I've got a question
Yeah.
for women that are always asking me, how should I mean, you know, and I go through it again, but how should I modify my practice during pregnancy? I mean, people are
Yeah.
obviously naturally incredibly concerned about, you know, being safe during
Yes.
pregnancy, what they should do or shouldn't do. You know, will you just kind of,
So, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
always my advice, I always find this funny too. And I think it's part of like the patriarchal sort of system that we're all embedded in and like working in unconsciously is we're always looking for like, what should all women do? And like,
right,
there's no other
yeah,
group of people where we're like, all men should do
yeah,
this.
yeah,
All Asian people should do this. All
true,
right. But for some reason, we feel like all women, regardless of like class, culture, like age, should do it this way. And it's like, no, right? There's so much biodiversity and bioindividuality. And so I feel like these big sweeping generalizations, like women have to take their period off, women have to rest for their first trimester, women have to, it's like, are you kidding me? Like,
right.
all
Well,
women everywhere of all ages at all times in every culture? What do
right.
you like? No. So it's a tricky question because I know
Mm.
people really want to do the right thing,
Yeah, especially
but
men. It's like, well, then it's like we feel like you're gonna say, well, you have to take your period off now, you know, and then it's like, well, actually, that's just patriarchy in the reverse, isn't it? So you're going to caught in this net. You're caught in the net of saying,
yeah.
where kind of come to practice, and it's like, no, don't come to practice. But you know, it's like,
Or
yeah,
even
but
women
rather,
telling other women you have to take your period off. It's like,
yeah,
what, are you gonna check? Like, no. That's what I always tell women. I'm like, if you want to practice on your period, just go, do it. Don't say anything. No one's gonna check. Like, just do what you want, damn it. Like, listen to
right.
yourself and like
Mm, mm,
take
mm.
charge, right? And I feel like it's the same with pregnancy. It's, for some women, resting is good, and having that full permission to rest is really important, and feeling like you can rest. For other women, maybe practicing is really important and like staying with the practice. There's again, so many hormonal changes, so many body changes,
Mm,
so many emotional changes. And the practice is something that really like creates steadiness. So for some women, practicing might create steadiness mentally, emotionally, physically, especially if it's something you've already been doing
mm,
for like,
mm, mm,
a long time. It's been a part of your life. Whereas other women, maybe they need to rest and take that time off. And so
mm,
for me,
mm.
I don't really like these big sort of like, you have to approach it this way. Everybody's really different, and everybody's body is very different, and every pregnancy is different. And, I love to talk about a student that I had she was a lawyer, type A personality, practicing every day, so committed. Her first pregnancy, she practiced basically full primary up until like 7 months or something. Like, no problem. She had a very long torso. She didn't even really start showing until she was like 7 months. And then finally I said, you could probably stop jumping back. Like, you could step. You don't have to do Marichiasana D. You could just like,
Mm.
twist the other way, like take
But
it a little easy. And she was like,
mm,
yeah, okay. I mean, she like took the advice, and not that she like changed her practice immediately, but it was just sort of like permission for her. Like, okay, when I feel like I
mm,
don't want to do this, I don't have to.
mm.
Her second pregnancy, she started changing her practice a lot earlier because now she had
Right.
another child at home,
Yeah.
little older, little less energy. Her body also started to show a lot sooner. She was
Hmm.
carrying her second baby very differently. Her third pregnancy,
Didn't even come.
completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just didn't even
basically.
come. Yeah.
I mean, she would come, but she'd do
Right.
like a lot more restorative type,
So
approach to her asana.
you mentioned the jumping and the marriage classes. I mean,
Yeah,
is it safe? Right. I mean, women will ask, is it safe to jump? Or we always hear this
yeah,
thing: don't no jumping, no twists for the first trimester, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not,
Um,
obviously you're not a doctor, but I mean, like, what was your experience or other experience of other women that you know?
Yeah, typically for me, I always like to use this as a rule. If you're not a high risk pregnancy, so if you haven't had to do in vitro, or if you spent thousands and thousands of
Yeah.
dollars to get pregnant, maybe rest, relax, take it easy, right? And if you're not a high risk pregnancy, of course, if you've had some complications or you've had a lot of miscarriages or a lot of trouble getting pregnant, then of course, please follow your doctor's advice. Ask your doctor first, consult, professionals, but
Mm-mm.
also resting, taking it easier, maybe not doing deep asanas, deep twisting, deep whatever. Anything where you're not able to breathe or you're feeling strong sensation in the abdominal area, probably you'll
Bad
want
idea.
to
Yeah,
avoid,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
if
Is
you're,
that yes reasonable? Yeah.
yeah,
Heel in
if
the
you're,
stomach? Probably not. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
it might
yeah.
just be something that's not, if it doesn't feel
Comfortable.
good, don't
Yeah.
do it. That's always
Mm-mm-mm.
my rule. If it doesn't feel
Mm.
good, even in the back of your mind, if you're I don't know if I should be doing this,
Probably shouldn't.
don't do it.
Yeah. Mm-mm-mm.
You don't have to worry about it. Just
Mm.
let it go.
Mm.
But, for other women, they feel really confident and really comfortable. I mean, one young woman, she said, I'm trying to test my baby. If it can survive, then it's good. It can
My
live,
God.
this was her approach. It's okay. I mean, that's what she wants to do. So, and even for me, I was the same. I was, in my early 30s. I practiced throughout my whole pregnancy. I was in Mysore for the first trimester of my pregnancy, practicing. And I felt you know what? I've been doing this my whole
Fine.
life.
Right.
I can breathe through it. I'm not holding my breath. I'm not straining.
Mm-mm.
I can throw my leg behind my head and do Kapotasana and talk at the same time. It's not a big deal. I'm not stressing myself out. But again, that was I felt quite comfortable doing all of that. I wasn't worried. I wasn't concerned. And I was I also had, a doctor's advice that 99% of miscarriages happen because of fetal misdevelopment. It's something that happens developmentally in the,
Right. Right. Right.
fetus itself, which creates, your body's oh, this life isn't viable. I have to, have a miscarriage. It's not anything the mother eats or
Or
does
does. Right.
or
Right. Right.
anything like
Right.
that. So I was quite comfortable. And I was thinking women in, working in the fields in India, it's not they get to quit working and just be I'm pregnant. I'm just going to sit around and do nothing. Or in Africa or all
Mm.
throughout the ages,
Yeah.
women still did all the things they were doing,
Mm.
even when they were pregnant.
So why
And
is it that
so,
there's so much fear and kind of control of a women's experience then, isn't it? That they're really, there's still a strong lobby not to do, right?
yeah, for
People say,
sure.
well, quit yoga as soon as you're pregnant, kind of quit yoga, quit doing anything at all almost. And it's yeah, it seems
Most doctors will
counterintuitive.
say if you've been doing something, keep doing it. You
Right.
know, like, I mean, not to excess. That's always the thing. Exercising, you should be able to speak while you're doing the exercise
Right.
so that you're not getting breathless, right? It's more about the breath and your ability to kind of stay balanced while you're doing it. But yoga should be something that's keeping you balanced, and you should be staying balanced in your practice, not practicing to a point of breathlessness or creating pain or, and so that was one thing that Peter Sanson said to me that we talked about in the conference. I said to him, oh, when you're pregnant, you really have to change your approach to practice. You need to really nurture your body more and nurture the life inside of you. And he said, shouldn't you practice that way all the time?